All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for this great turnout. Let me turn on the mic. There we go. Now everyone can hear me. This is our fourth digital SIG of the year, and we seem to be growing in momentum, so really appreciate that. I want to give a couple of shout outs here as we get started. One is to Emma for providing this wonderful, wonderful space. I look at it as an incredible resource for Nashville, and really appreciate Clint and sort of his vision of what he wants Emma to be here in Nashville as a resource. The second one is Turnip Truck, who provided the catering here. I don't know any of you guys who know Brenda that works out of the EC, but they always do a wonderful job, so I wanted to mention them. And so today is our largest digital SIG of the year, and we're going to be streaming it as well. So for those of you who had friends that may not be able to make it, that's one of our goals with the digital SIG, is to make everything available via streaming as well, trying to use technology to help educate everybody. So today we've got Stephen Boone of GS&F. So Stephen, come on up. And he's going to be bringing us a lot of great perspectives about user experience and how that applies to marketing. One of the reasons that this came to be was part of my job, both in my current job and past jobs in the Silicon Valley, have all been about user experience. And I think it's one of the things that sort of never gets enough emphasis in marketing, and the value of that, and how investing in user experience can pay off dividends. So without further ado, here's Stephen.
Well, thanks, Paul, and thanks to NAMA and the Digital SIG for having me out today. As he said, my name's Stephen Boone. The Charles is optional. It's there so that I'm not confused with other Stephen Boones. But I work at GS&F, a full-service, fully integrated digital marketing, fully integrated marketing communications firm. I did this talk actually about a year ago. I've only been at GS&F for 9 months. I did this talk about a year ago about how marketing and UX work together, and a lot has changed. The experience I've had there has certainly influenced my thinking, and I know it's a popular topic, user experience. You see it in a lot of blogs, you see it in a lot of pitches, a lot of capabilities, and being that it's sort of new as a function of marketing specifically, I thought it'd be good to open with sort of a brief history of UX and where it came from, what this field's all about. So if you look back, all the way back to the machine age, you have really great pioneers of American business like Henry Ford and Frederick Winslow Taylor, who developed processes and manufacturing, assembly line processes and efficiencies that really allowed for a great explosion in the manufacturing industry and product design. But these processes were often criticized for not being very human, not being very human friendly, harsh work environments and things like that. And at that time, Toyota, who was developing their own manufacturing process, had a motto: respect for people. And really what that meant was that they involved their employees directly in the process of designing their assembly line, their products. And what you see here is an image of what was called an end cable. And employees could pull this at any time to sort of stop the process and suggest an improvement to the assembly process, the manufacturing process, or the product, whatever it was. They really valued the input of their people, and saw that as a key component to the design of their products and their processes. And moving forward in time just a little bit, you have great thinkers like Henry Dreyfuss, who is one of the most famous industrial designers of all time. He wrote a book called Designing for People. And he said, when the point of contact between a product and the people becomes a point of friction, then the designer has failed. On the other hand, if people are made safer, more comfortable, more eager to purchase, more efficient, or just plain happier by contact with the product, then the designer has succeeded. So again, he's really focused on reducing friction, reducing barriers to use of a product and comfort level. And he actually published an entire study on what's called ergonomics, sort of the study of the human body and how products can fit and work well with the human body. One famous example of this is his telephone design. You sort of see the original telephone design on the left there, where the earpiece and the microphone are one thing. You had to sort of speak and then listen, and then move forward in time. They made it two separate pieces, but you still had to kind of stay in one place and speak. And then he designed this combined piece, which could be held and walked around with, moved around with, and made more comfortable to use, right? And even though we've moved beyond this design now, we still use it. And you know, every contact page of every website you've designed uses that as an icon, right? And it's a 50-year journey from that original design to his product, and which seems like a long time. It took a really innovative thinker who thinks about the way that people ought to be using a product. So what about designing for consumers? You know, things that may be industrial design for consumers. I pick on this guy a lot. I feel bad that I do, but Ken Olsen was former CEO of Digital Equipment Corp, and they designed these sort of room-sized computers in the 60s and 70s. I always think of Superman 3, you know, sort of that goofy room-sized computer as a villain. But he was famously quoted as saying, "There's no reason for any individual to have a computer in their home." Right? He saw microprocessing as weak, and you know, felt like computers are industrial and they're sort of meant for you know, work tasks and high function processing. And of course, the Apple II was designed soon after and completely disrupted the industry. And you know, in such a way that eventually Digital Equipment Corp went on to file for bankruptcy and was acquired by Compaq. And here we're only looking at a 20-year journey, so a much faster cycle. So again, the idea that this technology is not just for an industrial purpose, it's not just for business purposes, it's actually to be consumed and enjoyed as well. So the term user experience, right? We've talked a little bit about manufacturing and services and products, but the term user experience can probably be traced back, is definitely traceable back to Don Norman. He was sort of known as the first person to have that in his job title. He worked at Apple in the 90s and was famous for designing a lot of the software and the products that they really took their business to a whole other level. He said, "No product is an island. A product is more than a product. It's a cohesive, integrated set of experiences," right? So each moment that you interact with a product adds to your experience, and each moment has to be cared for and designed in the eyes of Don Norman. He had a lot of great principles that are still applicable in the field of user experience today. So that's a lot of people and sort of companies that influence, but there have also been a lot of social breakthroughs and events in our society that have led to the explosion of user experience as a popular field. One of the most important is social media, of course. About a decade ago, these companies started to emerge, and what this meant was that user experience designers who are employed by companies like Facebook and Twitter are now no longer responsible just for human-computer interaction, which is sort of where the field was founded, but they're responsible for the interaction of humans to other humans, how we communicate with each other, not just on a business level, but on a personal level as well. And you know, Bill Gates, you know, said very well that access to information and the ability to give people a voice who had never been heard was made possible by these revolutions in the PC and the evolution of experience design and companies like these. So now user experience is moving into human-to-human interaction. And things have not stopped there. Our digital world is now becoming more physical as well, right? About 8 years ago, 9 years ago, the first iPhone came out, and we carry this everywhere in our body. And we look at only a 7-year journey between when that first iPhone was released and then things like smartwatches and you know, wearables, Fitbits. Now we have beacons. And so user experience designers are now responsible for designing experiences that interact with the world around us. So we've moved out of just computers and apps and into interacting with other people and even interacting in the environments around us. So a major growth and change in the field, really when you look at it all, what it means is that to design an experience throughout history, every one of these, my point of view is that you're taking a complex process and you're making it simple, right? And that's part of designing the experience. You're taking, oh, font troubles, new computer today. You're taking something that's industrial and you're making it more consumer friendly. And you're taking something that's technical and you're making it more human. So that's really what the goal of an experience designer is. And you're not doing it for no reason. You're doing it to create some sort of value in the world, right? It's not just for a fireworks show, at least not in most cases. You're trying to fill some sort of value in the real world and for people. But a lot of what we looked at was value in very much a communications or utilitarian manner, and a lot of the famous founders of user experience design have operated in this way. But my feeling is it doesn't really stop there. One of my great inspirations is Walt Disney, and I think he can be looked at as an early pioneer of user experience design, even though he was a lot of other things as well and did not label himself in that way. He said, you can design and create and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it takes people to make a dream a reality. And of course, he's talking about Disney World. He said, Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world. So his idea there is that continuing to evaluate, a dedication to continuing to improve the experience and letting it evolve over time as people's needs and behaviors change. And he was a really great thinker. He calls his staff Imagineers, and it's dedicated to that magic. And when you compare it to a competing experience, I think Six Flags and Disney World is a fair competing experience, even though as brands they're very, very different, and there's a lot that goes into making Disney the brand that it is. Disney is an experience brand, and Six Flags is a great product. That's a picture of Six Flags Magic Mountain there on the left. That's my Six Flags. I lived in California briefly and loved going there. You sort of make your way to the gate and you pay, you get in, and there's rides everywhere. They're really dedicated to adding new and innovative rides, and that's kind of their thing. But people don't plan 3, 4, 5 years in advance to go to Six Flags, right? You go to one if there's one nearby. It's a great product. It's a good time. But even my sister-in-law told us yesterday she has a 3-week-old baby, and she's already planning for a Disney trip when the baby is between kindergarten and first grade. So very specific, right? People plan way ahead for this. And the reason is you don't just arrive and go and pay and get in. You arrive, and there's a tram there to take you from the parking lot to the payment gates. And they're really dedicated to keeping their lines short. That's part of the experience. Then after you've paid to keep your line, the short lines after you've paid, you select a method of transportation to the park. You sort of have a monorail or a ferry option. The last time I was there, I took the ferry, and you float across the lagoon, and you round this corner, and there's the castle. You get this great like wonder and awe as the castle sort of appears in the distance. Then you exit the ferry, and you have a security check. So again, they've separated payment and security check. They keep their lines moving. They keep them short. And once you get through that, there's a train there that can take you to any of 3 worlds that are kind of specifically designed for different kinds of people and interests. And if you decide not to do that, you can walk under the train tunnel, and you're at Main Street, and there's entertainment, there's the castle, there's things going on there. So you'll eventually ride Space Mountain, but pardon us while we blow your mind for just a little while first, right? It's a complete experience, and that is why people plan ahead. So, marketing. I've talked a lot about product design, service designs, applications in some cases, software. How did UX get mixed up in marketing? And what does it look like? They're actually fairly similar. I think they've been growing together over the years, which has really been cool to watch and see and be a part of. And where maybe there have been a time where there's this sort of I drink your milkshake mentality, there will be blood. They're very much complementary fields now, and can bring great value and joy in the world when working together. But to think just historically about where the two fields kind of started and grew up, if we were to wind back the clock, marketing originally, for a while may have just been largely focused on branding, communication, how they reach people, channels, and really for the purpose of trying to compel people, right? Motivate people, inspire people to take a certain action. Where user experience is much more involved in the use of something. Problem solving, usability is what Don Norman pioneered a lot. Human-computer interaction, and serving people in some way through software is where that field grew up. But as the two have grown together, they're sharing these concerns, and everybody's really interested in consumer research, strategic processes, design and content, and really for the purpose of providing that value and building loyalty in consumers. And this is where they've grown together, and it's been really cool to be a part of. But again, how did this happen? I think the digital explosion, for the last 20 years, of course, we had a .com boom, e-commerce, online reviews became very important for brands, social media, as we've already talked about, and most recently we've lived through an app explosion. We're at the beginning of a environmental and beacon and wearable explosion now. I think it's too early to see really where that's going. We're kind of in the end of the first phase of that. But we've had these explosions, and brands that have succeeded like Apple, Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Instagram have all keyed on user experience as being a very core function of what they do and part of their mentality. So when those kinds of brands identify this practice, whatever it is, as being successful, people start to listen. And we have to be honest, there's been a bit of a buzzword factor, right? I mentioned this before, blogs and pitches and people saying, oh, we do user experience. There's sort of this faux UX designer out there who maybe has, knows Photoshop and has designed a website. So, okay, he's a user experience designer, right? It's been so buzzwordy the past couple of years, and a bit of a reactive jump to try to get involved in this that has forcibly brought these two practices together. If we look at the most recent explosion that we have lived through, the app explosion, if you were to wind the clock back 5 years, you have, in 2010, very few apps at all in the Android market, not that many in the iOS market. I think less than 20,000 total in combined. Fast forward to last year, you have nearly 1.4 million in each market. And that's insane, right? That's insane growth. It's really too much. And Android has finally eclipsed iOS, which as of last year, which a lot of people are really interested in. What about consumers? What have they done? From 2011 to 2013, the amount of time that they would spend in these apps doubled from about 16 hours a month to 32. But they only kept an average of 2 more apps on their phone at a time. So from 24 to about 26. So even though they spend more time, they're not using more apps. They're more selective about the apps they use. So what it means, so obviously there's been an increase in competition, right? 1.4 million per market. That's a wild amount of competition. Honestly, there's been an increase in app for app's sake. A lot of companies are saying, oh, well, people are in apps. Let's make an app. No real strategic, no real value. They just need to get an app out there, right? I'm actually going through this with a brand right now who in the past 5 years has published 48 apps and had different departments kind of just rushing to publish an app. And it's a big mess, right? They've got huge user experience problems because this means an increase in bad apps. People are just publishing an app to try to get something out there in front of the consumer. And from the consumer's point of view, there's been no change in the demand for volume, right? We just saw that, but there has been certainly an increase in the demand for quality. They're spending more time, and there's so much free content out there and apps to use that they expect the best and they expect to not have to pay for it. So let's look at some examples. Quiksilver published an app for their surfing audience. It had weather information about 2,000 surf spots. It included their Quiksilver TV content for pro team riders, and it had news and live events. So the idea here was to cater to their surfing audience and hopefully build that loyalty. What happened? These are some app reviews. One of the worst apps I've ever seen. All the other big brands have great apps. Why Adobe Flash can't watch videos on an iPhone? So that's clearly just a lack of testing and mistaken attention on their part. And this app hasn't been updated for a long time. That's actually the one that's most important to me because, again, if you think back to that Disney mentality and that magic, it's a constant pursuit of providing experiences. It's never finished. You have to continue to cater to your user if you expect them to keep this as one of their roughly 25 precious apps on their phone. Not the greatest experience. It's fair to say that they just abandoned this. Maybe they ought to remove it from the market, but they haven't done that yet. Competing brand Oakley published a very similar app called the Oakley Surf Report. You can track the swell and tide and just about everything else you'd want to know about your favorite breaks. It's got forecasted conditions, HD cams, if you notice, they're even using language the surfers would probably use, right? They've worked really well with their marketing partners to say, track the swell, tide, and wind. That's talking like a surfer talks. It's had a great reaction. By far my favorite surf app. Another very aspirational commenter said, thanks, Oakley, you saved me a lot of time because the other surf apps were so bad I was on the verge of writing my own. That's kind of silly. There's a lot of silly reactions in the App Store, but the ratings and the download feature figures speak for themselves. And if you notice, Oakley's also not really trying to push their content on their users. They're just kind of asking that you, enjoy the app, find good value out of it, and all they really want in return is, of course, some data. They're going to get some data. But I think really all they want in return is to know that when you think surfing Oakley is one of the first things you think of. They're really focused on that value add and that entertainment, the utility, and the loyalty that they'll get from their consumers, hopefully, from this app. So a great approach by them. You may look at those two examples and think, well, Quiksilver is just very poorly designed and they abandoned it a long time ago, and so it's not a fair comparison. So what if we had a couple apps that were both really well designed and had those to compare? Pampers released an app a couple years ago for pregnant mothers, and the idea here was that you could track a baby's milestones. You get sort of these handheld visualizations of the baby as they're different stages of their development. You get audio clips. You can share the progress in social networks. You see, you have a really beautiful design. They've taken great care and detail into these images of what the baby would look like. There's a nice progress indicator sort of in the menus, nice and out of the way. The audio integration was done very well. Really well designed and well thought out app. But what happened with this one? Amazingly bad response. One of the most common complaints was that people said they didn't want to be forced to connect with Facebook. So as soon as you launch the app, you're forced to connect with Facebook, right? And they really didn't take the time to think about their user and their user's needs. And a lot of these mothers aren't telling people that they're pregnant for quite a while, right? At least through the first trimester. And they don't want people to know. And so that forced connection and the idea that it's going to share content pushed people away before they even started. So a big mistake on their part, and I don't know how that happened. Maybe they had a great experience design team and some stakeholder forced them to add that feature, or maybe they never tested. The point is that you should really be testing and working with your concepts with your users, with your consumers, with real people as you develop them before you push them out. I like the last one too. This app must have been designed by a man, right? Again, as a man, and having to design products for women at times, I would never pretend that I could nail it without testing with real people. And so that's where they made a mistake. Not exactly a competing brand, I know, Charmin, but it's all they're all about the base, just like Pampers. Want to keep the bottom clean. They released an app to find public restrooms, and the idea is that you can sort of rate them, giving them a sit if it's a good or a squat. I guess that means you're going on it if it's bad. But you can filter by needs, such as if you need a handicap bathroom, you can upload your own photos, you can read reviews. And it has a complimentary web app with all the same content, and this is pretty well appreciated. It's not getting, it's not going to change the world, and it's not getting the most amazing reviews you'll see out of any app. But people, I'm a bathroom freak, and now I don't have to spaz about bad, dirty bathrooms. It's sort of the ultimate George Costanza app, right? He would have really loved this. But I mean, it's nice. It fits with their brand. It's an interesting idea. I think they're still looking for adoption and content in a lot of cities. That's the most often complaint I see about this app is people being in a city where a lot of people haven't participated. So they would have to pair that with a really good marketing strategy to get people to buy in and use it, right? But it's a good tool, and it's one that's appreciated, and it's certainly not the PR nightmare that the Pampers app was. I forgot to mention, the Pampers app was such a bad PR explosion on them that they actually had to remove it from the store. You can no longer download that app, so don't try. So UX designer at an agency, what does it look like? I've given some brands a hard time for making some selfish decisions and not thinking about their users first. I don't know firsthand if those brands, how they organize their UX team and where they sit in terms of decision making. I do work at a full service agency though, and what exactly does a UX designer look like? I love this guy, Waldo. Anybody, hopefully some of you remember Waldo. Where's Waldo? He's sort of in this sea of people. A lot of the people kind of look like him. There's a lot that they have in common. Here's a guy down here with the same shirt on, but he's got a mustache, so he's not Waldo. And there's a lot of people with the colors sort of flying the flag all around the scene, but they're not Waldo either. There's only one Waldo, and there he is. He's got his glasses on. He's carrying a camera. He's kind of hard to see. He's got a lot going on today. So what's my point? My point is that, again, a UX designer is sort of a unique set of skills. It looks a lot like marketing, certain functions of marketing, but if you don't dedicate resources and commit to user experience, then you're probably pretending a little bit, right? If you're wireframing and you know, publishing websites, that's not UX design. If you have you know, consumer research departments and brand strategy, and they're finding out information about your consumers, then that's not exactly the same as UX research. They're a little bit different, but they complement nicely. So why do you need this extra person? Why you got to go find your Waldo? Well, brands really need positive experiences. Some recent figures, 58% of people say they've shared experiences online compared to 5 years ago. 95% say that they've shared a negative customer experience with other people. 87% say they've shared a positive experience, so it's not all negative. People are sharing their experiences online. And what about loyalty? These kinds of figures have been around for a long time. It costs 5 times more to acquire new customers than it does to keep your existing customers. 80% of your revenue for most companies comes from 20% of their customers, and those are the loyal ones. And 91% of unsatisfied customers, when they switch brands, they're not coming back. They're gone. Anybody left Comcast and never gone back? Sorry if any of you work for Comcast. Little joke. But Jeremy DiPaolo, Senior Manager of Global Brand Design at PepsiCo, said this in an article just last month, so I'd like to thank him for giving me good content. He said even the concept of what a brand is has shifted to become more personal, less commercial and institutional. The best out there are realizing this. Brands like Android, Airbnb, Dollar Shave Club, and even some larger, more established organizations like PepsiCo, Delta, and Starwood are investing considerable energy and capital to develop user experience in total. And what he means by that is connecting the needs of people to innovate and drive brand value. The whole system has to work together. Product, service, delivery, and message. Those 4 things, in his mind, this is what makes up a brand nowadays. And people see that as a personal experience for them, right? A brand is much more personal to me than it used to be. You can even think of Apple's ads in the 80s, where it was sort of that revolutionary ad of, you know, the woman throwing a wrench into the whole 1984 situation. Now their ads are very much, I'm with my family and I'm taking photos and this is my life and this is personal to me. But product, service, delivery, and message, all 4 key to developing a brand and to developing experiences. So let's look at some examples of that. A product experience, the Honda Insight and the Toyota Prius are directly comparable. They're both affordable hybrid cars. And Honda entered the market first. Sort of the driving experience, when you go to test drive, the things that you're going to notice in that car as you drive down the road is you get this real-time display of cruising range and fuel efficiency scoring, what the battery is doing. You got your climate controls are kind of in a different spot. That's sort of interesting, good design decision. And then you've got your standard radio controls and your gear shift. And there are models that have a little bit more bells and whistles, but this is the norm. And the driving experience really showcases the new technology, the hybrid technology. Compare that to the Prius, and you again have some similar things like the display of the cruising range and fuel efficiency. You've got real-time battery charge updates. You've got most of your climate controls and your radio controls have been moved to the steering wheel, so they're right there by your thumbs. You've got this real-time mile per gallon scoring, which if you've ever, I bought a Prius recently, and if you've ever driven behind me on 65, I apologize, because this thing makes me drive 50 miles an hour sometimes because I have to kind of beat my high score and stay above 50 miles a gallon. They've got this innovative, you know, comfort gear shift design over here. You see it's right there by your hand. You don't have to reach out for anything or down for anything. It's sort of right there, going back to Henry Dreyfuss's, you know, concepts of ergonomics and fitting into that human body. And there's really thorough design decisions to keep your eyes on the road and into your driving experience and not looking around at all this other stuff, right? Even when you push these buttons, and when you touch these buttons on your steering wheel, there's an indicator on the dash that shows you which button you're touching, so you don't even have to look down a little bit to see which button you're touching. So really, the experience was made to change behavior, right? It's making me drive more fuel efficient. It's making me pay more attention to the road, and it's a behavior changing thing. And if you're shopping for a car and your real test is that test drive, you're going to notice at least a few of these things. So what happened? Year after year, the Prius is the best-selling hybrid car. I think we've lost count. In 2013, 49 times more Priuses were sold than Insights. That's crushing, right? That's amazing. It's been so bad that Honda made the decision in June to discontinue the production of the Insight. So really a major defeat. And keep in mind, these are competing products. They're both seen as affordable hybrid cars. The Honda's even cheaper, so more people are making the decision to spend more money for that Prius experience. And really what we see is that Toyota's really continuing their legacy and dedication to great experience design. You know, I think back all the way to 100 years ago when they had this respect for people concept and the N and cable, and this mentality that they care about the experience and care about the input of people. Not that Honda doesn't, they just really excelled in this case, right? And they've even been so dedicated that they'll bring people like Don Norman from Apple into their experience design board as advisories. So really an ongoing dedication. So that's a product design, and I know you might be thinking that as marketers we're not likely to influence the design of something like an automobile, and that's fair. But we can certainly influence the design of service experiences, right? And a great example of this would of course be the Apple service experience to the Geek Squad one. And you may already know where this is going, but let's dig in anyway. With Apple, you can make an appointment online. You can choose your store and your time that you need. It's very easy to do. Your options are clear. You get greeted by a concierge as soon as you arrive. They sort of check quickly. They know who you are. They can tell you what's going on with your appointment. And if it's running behind, you can play with all the stuff in the store, which is great, right? And then you get to talk to a genius. He's a genius, and she's a genius, and they're all geniuses. And if they're busy, if they get busy, there's these screens around with tips and you know, latest innovations and things you can look at while you're waiting. So it's got a bit of that Disney magic, right? At every step of the way, they took the time to think about what it is that we could do to improve that experience every step of the way. And as I said before, experience designers are moving into the real world, right? As the more that we have devices on our body and things that are interacting with the environments around us, experience designers are getting more and more involved in these kinds of decisions. Let's compare that to Geek Squad. I found this image of Geek Squad. I've never seen a Geek Squad like this. It looks really nice, and maybe they're sort of making an effort to improve what the brand looks like in the stores. But most Geek Squads, I took the photo on the top there, look like this, right? You're in that warehouse atmosphere, which they can't really change. They're part of the Best Buy brand, which is a great brand, and the warehouse atmosphere gives them a lot of advantages. But they're sort of roped into that, and they have to battle with that, right? You can make an appointment online. I tried to do this just to sort of evaluate what the online appointment system was like, but it was actually broken. I was not able to successfully make an appointment on my iPhone, so I don't know if they're just that angry at Apple or what. But you arrive, you locate the sign. It's going to be probably in a different spot depending on the different stores because they sort of have to move them around. So you've got to do that moment of where am I going, and then you wait in line. You have to be called. You can't play with anything. You know, don't lose your spot. And it's got that warehouse atmosphere, and even the way the guys look. You know, they're dressed in that white shirt and tie. They look professional, but you know, I want to go talk to that guy. And even if I'm thinking about where I'd like to work as an employee, this affects the employee experience too, right? Would you rather go be a genius and wear a t-shirt and jeans, or would you rather hang out in a warehouse and be wearing a shirt and tie? You know, that's part of the brand's experience, right? So that's why brands and marketing professionals and agencies need user experience designers, and dig in a little bit to why user experience, I think, needs marketing, and how we come together over the brands we're working for. Consumer research is definitely where it would all start in terms of how these two professions and different kinds of people work together. And I can honestly say that the past 9 months at GS&F, one of the greatest joys for me has been collaborative efforts in research with different kinds of researchers and marketing teams that research in a different way than I do. And I think you can really, if you do it right, you get this supercharged research about your consumer and your persona. But again, looking at sort of how research was founded in these two different practices, marketing, often you're thinking sort of who is this person, you know, segmenting, what do they respond to, what channels are they in, so how do we reach them, right? how do we get to this person? What's going to influence them and inspire them, and who are they? User experience professionals are often looking at tasks and goals and workflows and pain points and natural behaviors, like how it fits into the human body and the functional workflow, and think about, what does this person need? How can I improve their efficiency or their enjoyment or their comfort or something like that? And as the two have grown together, I think both sides care about all of these things now, and it certainly goes a lot deeper than just this. But even the way that they evaluate, historically, a lot of market research has been done in quantitative segments, and then evaluating marketing concepts with focus groups. And user experience designers historically have been doing a lot of one-on-one interviews with sort of one person at a time, either to get to the bottom of what the need is or test the product. And then they do quantitative testing on the web or in apps with things like Google Analytics to sort of measure what their assumptions were. But for me, combining with what I know how to do with these quantitative segments and these focus groups and the approach that marketers take has been extremely powerful. And I hope for them it's been the same way. I've certainly learned a lot more about my audiences, and everybody's really focused on what is the lifestyle, what are the activities, what do these people desire, and what's going to motivate them either to use this product or just to give it a try, right? Just like with any great experience design, it's useless if people aren't motivated to try it and aren't made aware of it and given an easy path and a least barrier of resistance to enter in. So persona development, when you combine these two fields, becomes very, very powerful. But that's really just the beginning. That's how you learn about your person and sort of what's going to motivate them. To have that Disney magic and that Apple magic and that Toyota magic, you really have to evaluate an entire customer journey. This is one of my favorite tools as I enter in with any brand and consulting, is to take a look at a customer's entire journey and figure out where the biggest opportunities are. And if you've ever looked for a customer journey and kind of wondered, how do I dive into this? They look a lot of different ways. They come in a lot of shapes and sizes. Here's an example that has a lot of really good content, but it's pretty verbose. It's for a pre and post service experience that somebody would need, when they need service for their product. Here's one that Lego released for their wow experience and in-store experience, and this one's great. You can kind of see emotional before, during, and after the experience, or the emotional and the different steps involved, but not a lot of great detail that I could really act against, and so a little bit missing for me there. This is a pretty nice example that shows visually the flow through the Auditorium visitor experience, and I get that visual flow and the idea of what this user is going to go through as they move through the process, but I also have some notes underneath and actually segment that by different personas. So these look a lot of different ways, and it can be a little intimidating to think, how exactly should I attack defining my customer journey for my audience now that I've got this supercharged marketing and UX persona. I think there's some common elements, things you can do if you want to use this technique. You have to begin with the hero's journey. I sort of like the hero's journey analogy, and sort of the troubles they're going to encounter on the way and the change that's going to happen to them through the journey. It also focuses on your hero, which is your persona, and you have to sort of decide, what journey am I evaluating, right? So we'll look at Superman for now. I mentioned him earlier. I'll mention him again. Christopher Reeve was my Superman as an 80s kid. If I'm going to sort of evaluate a Christopher Reeve journey, like maybe he's going on vacation, Superman journey, if he's going on vacation, he needs a break from it all, I'd look at the steps. So, each step that is involved in his vacation journey, if he's going to book tickets, who is he talking to? Is he talking on social media? Is he researching online? What are the different steps that he has to take, phone calls he might make to make a booking decision, right? I sort of try to also catalog the affects, what I think is the affects, so anything that affects his journey. This could be other people, location, time of day, devices he has to use, etc. These are anything that might affect his journey. But what is the effect of that? And this is probably the most important part of a journey map. And so each step of the way, as he deals with each of these effectors, what is he thinking, feeling, and doing? And user experience designers and researchers are very accustomed to discovering this, again, one-on-one with real people. They'll walk through the process with them, ask them, okay, now what are you thinking? Now what are you feeling? Now what are you doing? And a key component, which we'll see an example in a moment. And then a plan. No map and no evaluation like this would be really that useful without some actionable steps and things that you can do. So a great example, one of sort of like the gold standards floating around out there, is this Rail Europe experience map, and it's a travel booking experience like Superman might need. As you see on this visual area where he's you sort of have a flow and a diagram of what's happening to him all along the way. It allows you to sort of look at it and get an idea and get a feeling about what this experience is like, where things might be confusing, where there might have a little bit of a runaround. But then as you sort of dig in and move across, you have your thinking, feeling, doing. You sort of see this visual representation of how well Rail Europe has done in each moment of the experience. And you have some ideas down here, some things, some sort of idea starters, like, hey, we need to improve this paper ticketing experience. It's not very good. There's something wrong there. So why use customer journey? It's really a lot like a SWOT. You're going to evaluate an entire journey. You're going to see strengths. You're going to see weaknesses. You're going to be able to find opportunities. But it's also a strategic roadmap. It helps you look at all those in one shot and sort of make strategic decisions about where to evaluate first. And I like that they're visual because you can print them out poster size and plaster them all over the walls of your organization and really have people engaged in them. It's kind of a creative catalyst, right? As good as SWOTs are and as valuable as they are for researchers and account teams and planners, I've never once seen a creative team get excited about like a 10-page Word document SWOT, right? This is a way to get them engaged and get buy-in through the entire organization and really have something that you can ladder up to. And it helps make long-term dedication to improving experiences, right? So if you want that Disney magic and you want to have every step of the way meet your users and exceed their expectations, it's a way to achieve that. An example of some work that we did based on a journey map exercise for a brand called Banded. We settled on a big campaign idea for Every You. They had this great product, but really no experience to their brand tied around it. And one of the biggest things we found in the top left corner there was their packaging was really lacking in experience. You didn't feel special when you got this product, as great of a product as it was. So we worked on new packaging design and had layers to it and things that would sort of make you want to share this with your friends, like a Stitch Fix or one of those cool modern brands that has these great packaging experiences. Bloggers were another hero that we had to think about their journey, right? We really needed fashion bloggers to appreciate this product. So we figured out what would be good tools and what would give them some value and help them create content for their audience and make their day and their job a little bit more easy and a little fun. So we came up with sort of these mobile tools, personality quizzes, and blogger packaging. And of course, we found that there were just shopping experience problems that we had to fix, right? There were confusing moments in the customer's checkout journey. And we can sort of look at all these and prioritize. Not all of these have been activated yet. It takes a while, right? But if you have that journey map and you can be strategic and implement thoughtfully, you really end up over time creating that experience that you strive for. So now that you've got your journey map and you sort of have identified where the peaks and the valleys are and things you'd like to attack, how can you ideate against those and get good concepts and be confident that your users are going to appreciate them? My favorite approach is Lean UX. This is becoming more of a popular approach. Jeff Goethals is one of the main proponents of that. He used to work at the Ladders, and he's now mostly a speaker and author. But he said, what if we worked more collaboratively, focus more on the end state, the experience that we're actually trying to design, instead of documentation, and iterated quickly, worked more efficiently, and brought the true nature of the work to light faster. Sounds great, right? He's saying, what if we got to great ideas really quickly? And so who wouldn't want to do that? There's a photo of me and Johnny Lean UXing. The basic way that you would carry this out is you start with your problem and your outcome, the desired outcome. Notice, I think, outcome is an important word, not output. Again, we saw brands earlier that were panicking to launch an app. That was their output, where we're going to launch an app, right? We really should be focusing on a problem and an outcome. So we want to reduce phone calls, or we want to improve that paper ticketing experience, or whatever it is that we can do. We want to achieve a certain outcome and solve a problem. So we'll stick with Superman. We want to help him with his kryptonite problem, right? To ideate against this, you go through rapid ideation. I really like to get a cross-functional team together. And I don't know what all your organizations are like. You know, we have PR and creative department and account people, and I'll typically kind of cherry pick one person from a bunch of different disciplines and get them together to create really rough ideas on paper as fast as they can and get all these different points of view for how to solve this problem. And you test even your most rough ideas. If you get an idea on paper, test it with your stakeholders, test it with your internal teams, whatever you can do to make sure that there's some validity to that idea, and go through iterative fidelity. When you have an idea on paper that's looking pretty good, that seems to be working well, you start creating a slightly higher fidelity version of that as fast as you can and get that in front of real users and real customers to get their feedback. A lot of the app problems that we saw earlier would have been solved this way, right? And MVP, this is you know, sort of a tech term to be, you know, talking about tech startup type of, you know, San Fernando Valley kind of term, or Silicon Valley. It means minimum viable product. So what's the minimum number of features that we can give this user to achieve that outcome? Let's not try to throw in every single feature, because we'll never ship, we'll never launch, right? And or somebody else will beat us to it. We live in an age where brands and companies are publishing apps faster than you can imagine, and not just apps, but new experiences. And startups have a way of acting very agile. So this gives agencies and marketing professionals a way to move just as quickly as the startups do. So what it looks like, here's a shot from a Lean UX board that we had going at GS&F a little while back. And you see some whiteboard content there. You see sort of a stream of Word documents over there. That was somebody, you know, sort of coming up with what a customer service conversation might look like. That was part of the evaluation. And then you see sort of these rough app sketches all over the board and dots on them, right? And the dots we gave to stakeholders, and we only gave them 3, and they had to vote on 3 features or moments in the app that they thought were valuable enough. And that kept them from voting on things like, oh, we need a marquee and a carousel so that we can put this message out there and you know, communicate some message to our customers. It really made them focus on the value from the customer's point of view and choose things in a limited sort of way. And I mentioned iterative fidelity and testing. You see on the left there a paper prototype version of an app, and then in the middle we sort of have these 2 that, you know, look like something I could actually interact with. They don't look great, but we were able to test the paper concept with stakeholders and people in-house, and then move into this this one that was actually on a phone that we could have people testing on a phone while our art directors were working on styling separately. And this allowed us to learn and fail very quickly and learn what the true nature of the app needed to be to provide the maximum value to this user. And then, you know, we even tested that visual design and made some changes there, made things a little easier, gave the user some tips to open up the app, and wound up at a great concept. And it may seem like it takes a long time, but from that piece of paper over there to this finished design, which included every screen, was about 3 weeks. And it was tested with users. It was proven. We know it's going to be a success, at least from an MVP standpoint, and we'll see what we can do from there. You know, our dev team's still cranking through it. That's, you know, this allows you to get to the finished concept sooner and turn it over to your dev team so they can start working. So to wrap up, some thoughts on innovation. We've got our Google Glass Explorer there. He's made his own Google Glass because he didn't want to pay, you know, whatever thousands of dollars it costed a couple of years ago. But innovation for innovation's sake is not really innovation, and I think I've been saying that in different ways all through the talk. We've seen apps that were published without a real strategy, and I'm already seeing blogs posted about beacons, you know, where users are really frustrated. They feel like they're being stalked, and wearables that don't kind of do what we would like them to do. So just diving right in and creating these things without a strategy and without really tying it back to a user and their real world need is just tinkering around. It's just adding to your own skill set, right? Or trying to do the latest and greatest thing. To do it right, really, you have to take that human-centered approach from the great thinkers like Dreyfus and like Don Norman, and Walt Disney as well. You use your personas, you use the supercharged research that you can get from combining marketing and user experience professionals. You use that journey map. You don't throw something out there with users if they don't really have a need for it, and if it's not a significant gap in their journey with your brand. And don't hear me saying don't disrupt, because I love disruption. I love throwing new, new technologies out there, and there are a lot of good uses for beacons out there already. But do it with intent and experiment with passion. If you want to have this kind of a brand, you have to experiment with passion the way that a Disney and a Toyota and Apple do, and make it based on your real value for your users' needs. No presentation like this would be complete without a Steve Jobs quote, right? About innovation, he said, innovation has nothing to do with how many R&D dollars you have. You could hearken that to Google Glass. I think they spent a lot of money on that thing, and Google has done so many innovative things. And I think they do just kind of fire out with money a lot, right? They just try a lot of things and see which ones stick. But Steve said when Apple came up with the Mac, IBM was spending 100 times more R&D dollars. It's not about money. It's about how much. It's about the people you have, how you're led, and how much you get it. And that means getting it as an organization. User experience designers learning how to get what it means to be part of an organization that's focused on marketing as a function of marketing, and marketers letting them do what they know how to do best and not forcing them into traditional marketing practices. It's the merging of the two that's working so well for these brands. So thanks. I think we got 10 minutes left. We can have any kind of question discussions.
Yeah. Yes, this is really good timing. So now, as he said, we've got 10 minutes for questions and answers.
Yes. So was Lean UX something that you came up with, or something that you just adapted?
No, it's definitely it's got roots in the lean manufacturing process, which there's too much to say about that. But basically, the application of that rapid ideation and prototyping and testing it in the real world as cheaply and quickly as you can. That's why you see it sort of starting on paper and then moving into increasing fidelity. And as a lot of Silicon Valley app startups started adopting this process, they sort of went from lean manufacturing into sort of lean product design and lean experience design. It's sort of been an evolution, and there's no one person that you can just point to and say, yeah, they invented lean UX. It's been adopted by a whole sort of culture of people, and there's a lot of great writing out there about it. Jeff Goethals would be the person. He wrote a whole book about the subject, and yeah, a lot of great thinking there. If anybody wants to dig into more detail about that, we can do that now, or you can email or tweet me. It's something I really believe in. I've done a whole lot and seen great success with. Yes?
What were you saying is the best books?
Lean UX is the name of the book by Jeff Goethals. It was written 3 years ago, I believe. So he's even sort of expanded his thinking on it since then. But he, along with some product designers from California, sort of really have championed this cause. And they don't claim to own it because, again, it's based on things that happened in the past with lean manufacturing and lean product design. I think it's really cool of them not to claim to own it, but they're probably the best thinkers. So. Anybody else?
What are your thoughts on determining a return on investment of your user experience investments?
Yeah, boy. So I had a slide or two in there about working with clients, right? Because that's always the question: how much is it going to cost me? And it's a tough go. I think the investment that you're going to have to make certainly depends on how bad things are and what research has been done already. And if you've got good research to run with, then you can begin to evaluate. But if you don't have the research, then you have to really start from zero. And so the investment, can go up a little higher from there if you have nothing to start with. But I think once you're there, and again, I've seen with my own team getting to a great place with persona research pretty quickly based on the different competencies that we can involve, and sort of having that quantitative segment research, and then the one-on-one UX research. You can get there pretty quickly. Once you've done that, I think an experience map is fairly low investment in terms of evaluating and determining what our strategic roadmap can be, and then from there it's just deciding on the tactics. So I know it's kind of a very non-specific answer, but that's because it's a different answer for literally every situation. I think if your brand is dedicated to it, that's the main thing, because a lot of these experiences that you're gonna introduce are going to be mainly loyalty and sort of just customer service oriented, and you're really trying to retain that consumer. So if you can drive home the value of retaining the consumer and competing with a world that's catering to people every day, more and more millennials we know expect a lot, and because they were born into a world that had great thinkers like this who've been designing these kinds of things for a long time, right? So the cost of acquiring new customers as opposed to retaining loyal ones, I think, is the thing that I harken back to the most. And you just kind of have to prove it. You have to have case studies that prove that this stuff works. And so hopefully I showed a couple of those, but any questions that anybody has, I'm happy to answer about that as well. Anyone else? All right, well, thanks again, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. Our next digital SIG is going to be in March. We're going to have Tara Scarlett of Mars Pet Care talking about her experience with mobile and consumer brands. So March is going to be sort of mobile month for NAMA. We've got a mobile talk for our luncheon as well. So that's it. Thanks again, and thanks again to Stephen. Great job. This was awesome. That was exceeded all my expectations. Which, I don't want to. You say that I had low expectations.
Get the podcast.